What is going on, my friends? I just finished up my morning routine, ate my first meal, took the dog for a walk, did the first half of my coaching for the day, did my meal prep, ate my next meal, about to go for a walk and head out to the garage to train. We've made some changes to my training as of recent, so today's training session is going to be a little bit different, actually a lot a bit different, but I'm not very keen to film it, mostly because this is going to be the first time in quite a while that I'm going to have the ability to do a real fast-paced workout, right? Just kind of put on my headphones, play some music, attack the workout, try to get it done in less than an hour. It's my first opportunity to do so in a while, so I'm kind of looking forward to that. So I didn't really want to film it and take away that kind of pacing of having to set up my phone over and over and over and over, or set up the camera over and over and over. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the changes we have made to my training and the rationale as to why. So I think there have been 3 major changes-ish. These are going to sound like we've made a lot of big changes, but I'm hoping that I can convey this in a way where you guys are going to understand that the essence of the training program is staying extremely similar, and maybe just talk about why we're making the changes. So the first change is, as of recent, I've had 6 training days per microcycle. I did all 6 training days back to back, a rest day, rinse, repeat. So a microcycle lasts 7 days, is 1 week long. In the past, I have made better rates of progression, making that 7-day training split into an 8-day training split. So keeping the same 6 core training sessions and just throwing an additional rest day in the middle. So 3 sessions rest, the other 3 sessions rest. So the split remains the same, the sessions remain the same, but we have a different work to rest ratio. Whereas before we were working, or currently I'm working off of a 6-to-1 work to rest ratio. In the past, I've made better gains going 3-to-1 and making that that microcycle take a full 8 days. Why did we get away from this? 2 main reasons. The first one is it's a lot easier to line up competition preps when you're working off of a 7-day long microcycle. You just block it out on a calendar. It's very simple, it's very easy, it's very reliable, and adjustments are made easier. So that's a big benefit, right? And that's why we've condensed Max's training into, we've modified a split so that way we feel is getting enough work and quality rest. But that way we can make it a 7-day split, because it makes planning between and preparations for competitions that much easier. And I was prepping for the strongman show, which, if you don't follow my Instagram, apparently I'm not doing that because I am a moron, and it is the same day as Max's meet. Max is the #1 priority here, as he stands to do something quite cool and be the youngest person to ever deadlift 804 in competition. That's a lot cooler than whatever I was going to do. So Max remains the priority. I'll find something else to prep for. Not the end of the world, but because we wanted to line up our number of microcycles with that contest, a 7-day microcycle made sense. And then the other reason, which was my background bias in this whole thing, is just that I hate resting. I like training. Even if I feel like shit, I like lifting weights a lot, to the point where I have forced 7 days a week of training over and over, only to be worn down and not make good progression over and over. And I keep thinking I can figure out a way to do it. And if you count doing conditioning on rest days, you can do it, but you can't, it's difficult to resistance train effectively 7 days a week. I'm not gonna say you can't, but I have not had good success the million times I've tried to force it. So I kind of had this bias of like, yeah, I would love to only rest once a week and train all 6 days. That sounds awesome. Realistically, probably not the best. And now that I don't have a competition on the horizon, we don't need to get into that 7-day microcycle. We're going back to the 8-day. So you've got the same 6 days, tossing a rest day right in the middle. That is change #1. And it's kind of an inconvenience having that off standard, especially if you've got a more conventional work schedule than I do. But even the same, just to like planning with my girlfriend what days we're gonna get groceries. If that changes every week, it throws a big wrench in everything. So that's change 1. Change 2 is within those 6 days. I think the split was roughly, we had a bench day, we had an overhead press day, lower 1. We had a overhead press plus bench day. We had lower 2. We had an overhead day, or a bench day, and we had an events session. So for strongman events, right? So we had 3 upper sessions, but with a 2x frequency for overhead press and a 2x frequency for bench. So it went overhead plus bench, and then bench as the third one. The volume is going to stay the same, but we're going to condense that into 2 sessions. So 1 session of bench, then overhead, and then 1 session of overhead, then bench. So the working volume is actually going to remain the same, but we're dialing back the frequency. Not that the 3x frequency was outside of my capabilities, especially with this additional rest day worked in there. I think that could have continued to work. I just feel as though the frequency, less so than the volume, is making it so some sessions I'm not adequately prepared to perform to my utmost, which can have a time and a place within a program, is knowing, oh, well, this is my secondary or my tertiary bench day. My results are regularly worsened on this day. As long as I bear that in mind, as long as I'm stronger on this tertiary day than the tertiary day 3 weeks ago, then I'm getting stronger. I think that can have a time and place, but we're just going to condense that into 2 sessions, both of which being overhead press and bench. Pretty simple. The fundamental motions, the fundamental volumes, everything there is staying the same. It's just being condensed into 2 training sessions. So that is change 1. And that's change number 2, right? So we're adding the additional rest day to get out to an 8-day microcycle. And then we are going to condense our 3 pressing sessions into 2. So if we look at this, what do we have kind of remaining, right? We have 2 upper and 2 lower sessions. Cool. That's kind of my foundational strength training program. And aside from the volume being condensed, it kind of stays the same. We have the same underlying progression schemes. Everything kind of stays the same. It just is now upper, lower, rather than upper, lower, upper again. Right? So we have a upper day, we have a lower day, and then blank day. We've freed up a day within our 6 training days per microcycle. Rest, upper, lower events. So that we're challenging events twice a week, just as the same as we are any other major lift. I'm probably going to make that other kind of open day events. So it's going to go upper, lower events, rest, upper, lower events, rest. Relatively simple. We have our upper body strength training, we have our lower body strength training, and then we have our event practice kind of in even proportions to one another, 2 times per microcycle. Cool and dandy. That being said, I have ordered a yoke and a farmer's. They're going to get here probably next week, I would assume. So I don't have the equipment to do a proper event day yet. So I was thinking, like, what can I do with this 3rd day in this little training split that could be productive? The first thing that came into mind was to hit a grip workout. You can never have too strong a grip for strongman. I've always had strong enough grip to pull whatever I've been training for on bare hand deadlifts, all the way up to 765, I think is the most I've done to date. Just doing deadlifts for a dude with very small hands. My grip has always been oddly strong, but that being said, I've realized within the context of strongman, strong enough to pick up your deadlift isn't always enough. So prioritizing my grip a little bit more and hitting a little quick grip workout on both of those event days, cool. That's something I'm doing on both that I can start right away before my implements get here. And I was sitting there, I was like, man, I don't want this to be the most boring session of all time. What am I gonna do today? And actually, the idea that I bounced off Paris and he gave me the green light is to take my pulling volume that I usually include in my upper day alongside my presses and actually give it a dedicated day. So eventually it might be events and upper back would be this tertiary session. I would say pulling musculature has always been a relative weakness of mine compared to my pressing musculature and my legs. So giving it its own dedicated day logically in terms of resource allocation could be kind of interesting. It's the kind of one of the few things I've never done within my own training. Is pretty quickly I found that I liked training pulling and pushing together. It just made me feel good through my joints. So pretty quickly I adopted that within my training. So I don't think I've ever had a true dedicated back session. So that'll be something that's interesting to mess around with, to maybe bring up some lagging musculature, give myself more focus on my pressing days for the presses and give myself more focus on the pulling days for the pulls. Yeah, so that's the other thing is it's probably gonna look like, yoke, farmers, upper back and grip. Twice a week, once I get a stone over here, maybe a stone of steel, a plate loaded stone, maybe one of those days we'll have stone instead of yoke because yoke can be a little taxing. Maybe farmers twice a week as part of the grip workout, and then upper back, right? And then just kind of progressing some bodybuilding upper back work, seeing how that works in terms of bringing up some lagging musculature. And it kind of brings me to something that's at least an interesting thought experiment. This video is gonna be a little long, but I hope you guys enjoy it. It's just kind of my ramblings about what I've been thinking about with my own training. I like this new split of going upper lower events, and then potentially messing around with doing the upper back with the events instead of pressing, maybe doing the vertical pulling on the pressing day and then my horizontal pulling on the events day, something like that. It's just something I'm very keen to mess around with while kind of leaving that central upper lower main work intact. So that's kind of where we're at within training, and then introducing events as I get more implements at my house. But the thing that kind of brings me to it is how maybe a full body split is extremely effective for a beginner, early, intermediate, because it's going to let us stimulate our muscles at a pretty frequent rate. And you don't need that much stimulus to drive adaptation when you're relatively new. So you could literally go just like full body rest, full body rest, full body rest. And by stimulating these muscles that much more frequently, we're making phenomenal progression. Right? And then maybe either due to fatigue management or the fact that now you're advanced enough that the amount of work you need to do to get better in the leg department or the amount of work you need to do in the upper department is enough that it would kind of be a marathon to full body session. Then you could go upper lower, right? Upper lower rest, something to that general effect, which has become quite popular. And I think that's why it's such a good recommendation for the vast majority of people. But you will hear, especially kind of within the untested bodybuilding split, some people proposing this idea that like, yes, we've shit on a bro split in the past because due to frequency being a helpful variable in driving progression, it's really going to be not great for beginners, intermediates, lots of natural guys. But you'll hear some of the bigger guys say, well, at some point when we reach extremely high levels of muscularity, the amount of volume we need to do to get a real adaptive response in a given body part makes it almost impossible to combine a bunch of body parts into a single session. So they would say, well, the bro split is probably bad if you are smaller or newer or intermediate or potentially natural, I don't know. But when you get to the being really big, that the bro split becomes the pro split. It's the only way for you to get in enough volume per part. And basically the idea is that as you get more advanced, just like we maybe moved from a full body split to an upper lower split, maybe upper lower does eventually need to convert or diverge into maybe a pull push legs or some other 3-day allocation, right? And as you get bigger and hypertrophy is your main goal, maybe that needs to come out to a 4-day division, right? Of maybe you separate your chest and chest. You could go like legs, back, and then a chest day and a shoulder day, doing arms on both days, or you could do a chest and shoulders day and an arms day, however you want to do that. And then we deviate even more where we have a dedicated chest day, a dedicated arm day, a dedicated shoulder day, a back day, and a leg day, kind of the traditional 5-day split. And the idea being, well, maybe this is a sign of advancedness in larger bodybuilders, right? And I was thinking maybe you could argue that I've kind of hit the point where condensing all of the pushing and the pulling that I need to do to drive significant adaptation is a pretty big ask nowadays, because if I'm working up to a work set of, let's just say 8 on the bench press, maybe I only need to do 2 or 3 sets of those, but there's a lot of warm-ups. I'd probably be taking about 4 or 5 for my 8s right now if I were to take an educated guess. There's a lot of work associated with that. Then I have to turn around and warm up for overhead press. And if I was hitting 8s on a seated overhead press, I'd probably work up to about 275, 255, somewhere in that ballpark. Again, there's a lot of work associated with this. And then expecting to do a good job of putting similar effort into a vertical and a horizontal pull is maybe a bit of an ask. So we start separating these things. And maybe it'll eventually be a bit too big of an ask for me to squat and do a hinge in the same session. Maybe we have to separate outward. And it's much the same as when someone starts moving exotic amounts of weight, there's more and more time between their squatting sessions, to where some of the strongest guys in the world only squat heavy every other week. But just some general food for thought, some things I've been thinking about. Thank you guys for watching my video. I enjoy that I'm allowed to make just rambly ones where I get to talk about kind of what I'm doing within my own training, and that some people find it interesting. I think it's pretty cool. Thank you for watching.